Om Gajananam Bhotaganati Sevitam Kapita Jambu Palasara Bhakshitam Umasutam Shoka Vinasha Karanam Namami Vigneshwara Pada Pankajam Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha Guru Sakshat Parabrahma Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sadashiva Samarambam Sankaracharya Madhyamam Asmat Acharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsa Chanura Madhyam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. So welcome to SanGita program session number 20. Today is June 3rd, 2017, and we are at the concluding part of chapter 3. As usual, we will give you a very quick review of the previous session number 19, in which we covered the Sandhi in Sanskrit and also the Padachetas, how the words get split up into convenient portions so that you can read it easily. And we are covered up to verse 35 in chapter 3. In these chapters, verses 27 to 35, Krishna talks about the qualities of the ignorant and the wise, the jnani and the ajnani, and how to deal with the ignorant, and also doing one's own duty with full faith or shraddha. So going further, a quick overview of today's session 20. We'll have a very quick review of verse 35 again. And Arjuna starts with a question at the end of this 35 verse, in verse number 36, in which he says, what really drives a man to commit sins, knowing fully well that it is not good? And Krishna answers his questions in verses 37 to 43, with which we conclude the chapter 3 on Karma Yoga, the yoga of action. So having said that, let's revise the verse number 35. Sreyan swadharmo vigunaha paradharma swanishtitat swadharme nidanam sreyaha paradharmaha bhayavaha. We saw that Krishna advises that it is better to follow one's own duty, even though it may not be having a great appeal or merit, than the duty of another. Better is death in one's own duty. The duty of another is fraught with fear. So if a person is an expert in computer science, he cannot go and do a fireman's work. Likewise, a soldier who is fighting in the battlefront cannot be really doing the duty of a priest. So he is advising that it is better to do one's own duty, even though it may not have much merit in it, than take up the duty of another well discharged. So at the end of these verse, in verse 36, Arjuna is asking a question. Krishna has already completed his talk on Karma Yoga, which is the main theme of the chapter 3. Now he has got some serious doubts. Arjuna uvacha atakena prayaktoyam papam charati purushaha anichanapi varshneya baladiva niyojitaha. Now, Arjuna has got very serious doubts. And this is a very important question which is relevant even today. Now, every human being has got intellect or buddhi that guides him and provides some discriminative power. But yet, knowing fully well, very intelligent people make very serious mistakes that cause hurt to others physically or mentally with their actions. Why do people go up the wrong path and commit such sins, knowing fully well that it is not the right thing to do so? That's the question. A robber knows that it is wrong to rob. A killer knows it is wrong to kill. Yet they do it. What compels them to do that? You know, Dharmaputra gambled, knowing fully well it is not good. Duryodhana cheated. Ravana, who was a great Shiva Bhakta, abducted Sita and refused to listen to anybody, including Vibhishana. So you have, therefore, people who are intelligent, knowing fully well that what they are doing wrong, they still keep doing it. In modern times, if you look at it, you have so many intelligent people who have committed serious crimes. Raju of Satyam Computers, Bernie Madoff, Rajaratnam, Mackenzie Rajat Gupta, Governor Rod Blagojevich, you name, most of them landed in jail. You can see very eminent personalities, industrialists, entrepreneurs like Vijay Malaya, even judges like Justice Karnan recently. They all get into some problem. Why they do it is Arjuna's question. Ataha, now, kena, by which prayuktaha means impelled or driven. I am this, papam, sin, charati, does, commits, purushaha, referring to man, anichan, not wishing, api, even, varshneya, referring to Krishna. Varshneya means coming from the Vrishni race. Balat, by force, iva, as it were, niyojitaha, constrained. So the gist is, O Varshneya, Krishna, impelled by what force does a man commit sin, though against his wishes, constrained as it were? We see world is changing so fast and hear of so many serious problems like AIDS, kidnapping, killing, looting, increasing divorce rates. Why the world is having so many problems and sorrows? Question is why and why and why? If we analyze carefully, we may find that the source of this problem is neither physical nor intellectual. The world outside is really a reflection of our mind. I'm talking and you all listen, but everybody has a different level of understanding. Maybe you interpret things according to your own mind. The same world, to some it is heaven, to many others it is just hell. You take families, each one is different. Some love it, some hate it. You see a society which is greedy, selfish, arrogant, egoistic, heartless, impulsive, sensual, uncaring for others. But there's also other part of the world where there are good people. It's not that they don't exist. So each individual is a kind of a unit in this world and is a component or a family. So the cause of sorrows, it can be traced to imperfection in the minds of individuals. It is not really in stars, like Brutus and Julius Caesar was addressed by Cassius. Cassius was persuading Brutus to kill Julius Caesar. And he said, the fault, dear Brutus, is not in our stars, but in ourselves, but that we are underlings. So in Sanatana Dharma, reformation starts with the individual first, because only through individual perfection, a family, a community, and in turn, a country or the world can really be a nice place, a better place. So in this case, Arjuna is asking, which is that force which is really compelling people to do what they do? And Krishna is answering this beautifully in the verses that follow. Next, verse 37, if you see, Sri Bhagavan Uvacha. Bhagavan is talking now. Kama yesha krodha yesha rajo guna samudbhavaha mahashano mahapapma viddeyanamiha vairinam. He points out clearly, Krishna here, that there is no external force compelling us. There is no devil outside which is compelling us to do anything bad. It is something within ourselves. As Cassius said, Brutus, the fault is lying within ourselves. What is this something? Nothing but ajnanam or ignorance. And what kind of ignorance? Kamaha, desire. Yesha, this. Krodaha, anger. Yesha, this. Rajoho, Rajogunaha. We talked about it earlier. There are three qualities of guna: Rajo, Tamas, and Sattvam. Samudbhavaha, born out of Rajoguna. Mahasanaha, all devouring. Mahapapma, all sinful. Viddihi, no, enam, this iha. Vairinam, Vairinam means a foe, enemy. So the Bhagavan, Blessed Lord, said, it is desire and it is anger born of the quality of Rajas, all sinful and all devouring. Know this to be your enemy. And the object of desire may vary from individual to individual, but the presence of desire is something which is universal. So it is universally experienced by everyone. So Krishna uses the pronoun Yeshaha Kamaha, this desire, which you feel intimately in your mind. Now everybody gets angry sometime or other. It's a natural phenomenon. It's if it is directed appropriately at a cause without prejudice, it may work to finding a solution. Even our gods, many of them are described in angry mood, like Rudra. But if one gets angry inappropriately, it could lead to problem. For example, you cannot afford to shout at your boss. I wrote a book called Anger Management, Lessons from the Ancient. It is published by Smashwords. And it is drawing the wisdom from our ancient scriptures, suggesting solutions on how to manage anger. Now, if you look at it, how are these Kama and Krodha created? Krishna says they arise out of Rajoguna. And what is Kama? The nature, it is a great eater. Mahashanaha. You cannot really satisfy it. All desires are really expressions of one fundamental desire. That is a feeling of apurna or incompleteness. So you have this problem that I need to have more. I'm not complete with myself. I need a bigger house. I need to have 3 cars, more money, elevated status in the society. I need to get awards. Only if I acquire such things, my life will be somewhat complete. That's kind of feeling many people have. And many parents I know push their children to excel in school, join IIT, go to the US, do masters and so on. They're still not happy. Still not happy. It's like a mirage. You keep on chasing it. It keeps moving away and away and away, and there is no end to it. That is the nature of karma, that it is never ever satisfied. But what about anger? Now, Adi Shankaracharya says very nicely in his commentary that desire, when it is obstructed, gets converted into anger. When you don't get what you expect, that desire becomes anger. And sometimes fulfilled desire gets to become greed. Like in gambling, you don't stop. You want to get more and more. Only in eating, there is satisfaction. One cannot have more. That is why Annadam is prescribed as a yajna in our sastras. So anger is just one letter away from danger. If you take D out, it becomes anger. So anger is really very close to danger. It makes a person violent, both verbally, physically, very sharp tongue. The intensity of anger is directly proportional to the intensity of desire, which is obstructed. So Mahapapma, these two gunas arising up to Rajoguna, Kamaha and Krodha, Krishna calls him as great sins. So he says, may you understand these two principles. Now, how to handle these two enemies? In what way Gita is prescribing solutions? Now, one needs to use discretion in the first place. Vivekam, as it's called. We worship anger. In Rudram, the very first sentence is Om Namo Bhagavate Rudraya Namaste Rudramanyava Utota Ishave Namaha Namaste Astudanvane Bahubhyamutate Namaha Yate Shiva Tamashivam Babuvate Tanuhu. It goes on. Rudramanyava Utota Ishave Namaha. Manyu means anger. When you have the thread ceremony once a year, you do what is called Kamo Karshit Manyura Karshit Japam. Kamo Karshit, done by desire. The sins done by desire. Manyura Karshit, Manyu means anger. Caused by angers. Manyura Karshit. It's not I who doing it, it is this gunam, which is propelling me to commit this kind of sins, Kamaha and Krodaha. I remember a story by Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. You know, there was a holy saint who came to a village. And the villagers were terrorized by a snake, a deadly snake which had bitten many people. And the villagers appealed to the saint to do something about the snake. It is not going away from here. And that saint could talk to the snake, and then he went to the snake and told him, look, don't bite people like this. And the snake, realizing his value, agreed that he will not bite. And days later, when the sage was passing through the same route, he found the snake very badly hurt by the village folks who had beaten the snake. It was almost close to death, sort of. So the saint asked, what happened to you? The snake said, you told me not to bite, and therefore the people lost all fear of me. And they started beating me with the stones and sticks. And the saint shook his head and says, what an idiot you are. I told you to stop biting, but I didn't tell you to stop hissing. At least show your anger. When you hiss, people will get scared. So you take a captain in the army in the battlefield, he cannot be goody-goody to his soldiers. He has to shout to motivate them, to inspire them. At least use fake anger. So, in many cases, you have to use discretion. Change the scene if you are very angry. Travel, see nature, how it is beautiful. See the flowers in summer now. It helps. It's a temporary solution, but then it helps a lot. Now, Krishna is providing some more guidance as we go along. Let's go to the next verse, number 38 now. Dhumena avriyate vakni yatha darshaha malena cha yatha ulbera vrito garbhaha tata tena idam avritam. I have given you the padachedam also in the next line of this verse. You can see that here. So it's easy for you to pronounce it. How does desire cause problem for the human being? Just as you have a disease and analysis or diagnosis required, we should know what causes desire to create a problem. No, desire causes problem by blunting our discriminative power or vivekam, as I mentioned. It is really clouding it, sort of. That's why I use the word blinded by kama or desire. Buddhi or discriminative power is said to be the driver of the vehicle. Just as the driver alone decides which direction to go and how it should go, so is Buddhi the driver, which has to decide which should be the way of life. Dhumena, by smoke, avriyate is enveloped, vaknihi is fire, yata as adarshaha, a mirror, malena, by pollutant, dust, cha, and yata as ulbena. Ulbena is a membrane, avritaha, enveloped, garbhaha, embryo, tata, so, tena, by it, idam, this, avritam, enveloped. As fire is enveloped by smoke, you don't see the fire, but it's all completely smoke. Those of you who saw the video of recent Chennai silks getting burned, you could see only the smoke, but not the fire, really. So the smoke is enveloping the fire. And if you see mirror which is not cleaned up, there is a layer of dust on it. And just as an embryo is covered by the membrane, amnion as it's called, so this is enveloped by that. What is this and that? Kama, desire, is enveloped by the cloud of ignorance. Thinking power gets blunted. That is why you find many intelligent people going the wrong way, because they get this envelope of ignorance at that point of time, and they are not able to use the buddhi effectively. The knowledge covered by that desire in such a way, like a fire, smoke by smoke, a mirror by dust, and the embryo by the fluid, so becomes the vivekam gets blunted. So this is the quality of the desire, and it gets completely blunted by these, what do you call, the lack of intelligence at that point, lack of using the buddhi as a driver. Swami Dayananda Saraswati used to give an example. I had invited him long ago in Madras Management Association, and he gave this example. Only human beings have this problem. Animals don't have. A cow has no problem in choosing a variety of food. Where a person goes to a restaurant, for example, his desire is confused because there are so many items available, whether to order a masala dosa or go for samosa or a potato vada or whatever. There are so many items available which are very, very tempting. And he gets confused because the desire is spreading all over. And finally, he decides, he looks at the neighboring table, somebody is having a very colorful dish. So he goes and orders that. Only man has got this kind of a problem to choose the right thing. But an animal doesn't have it. A cow is not bound by this kind of desire. So it's free from that. So you have this problem for human beings to be able to use the discriminative power. If you're diabetic, you like to have ice cream, you like to have sweets, a rasgulla or a gulab jamun, but your buddhi is warning you, look, it is not good for you. But your mind overcomes that. Oh, doesn't matter. After all, one day, how does it matter? So you take it, and one day becomes 2 days and 3 days, and then the disease continues. So he's finding it very difficult to use the buddhi in the right way, because the lack of discrimination comes into play. Going further, verse number 39, Avritam jnanametena jnaninaha nityavairina kamarupena kaunteya dushpurena analena cha. Very beautiful verse. Kama's job is to continue. When you say kama, you have to continue the sentence. You don't put a full stop. So like English kama continues, and it is endless. Desire and anger cloud the vivekam, discriminative power. The difference between dharma and adharma gets lost. Like it happened to Dharmaputra, like it happened to Ravana. He was very intelligent, but discriminative power gets completely clouded. Ravana got so many boons from Lord Shiva. He was a great Shiva Bhakta, a Brahmin, and he wanted to try his own strength. So he put his feet under the mountain Himalayas where Lord Shiva was sitting with Parvati and lifted the whole thing. Tested his strength against the Guru. So it is not that he was lacking in intelligence, but the intelligence was clouded. So here in this word, avritam means enveloped, jnanam is wisdom, etena by this, jnaninaha of the wise, nitya vairina. Nitya means constant. Vairina is enemy. By the constant enemy, kama rupena in the form of desire, kaunteya, addressing Arjuna, dushpurena, insatiable. Like what? Analena. In Tamil also we say anal. When the summer wind blows, you say anal katru. It's a Sanskrit word derived from alan. Alan means nalan. Analena. Adena. You put is not satisfied. What is not satisfied? The fire. The fire, if it starts even as a spark and starts catching fire, it's very difficult to stop it because it will start devouring everything around. Wood, cloth, whatever can be burned, it will go on burning. So analena is not satiable, but it is referred to here as fire. So Krishna is telling, oh Arjuna, wisdom is enveloped by this constant enemy in the form of desire, which is insatiable as fire, analena. So this is very true in case of desire. It has no end and it keeps on devouring everything. So it's a quality. And be aware of this quality is the meaning of this verse. Going further, verse number 40. Indriyani mano buddhihi asya adhisthana muchyate etaihi vimohyati yesha jnanam avritta dehinam. Indriyani. Now, Krishna has already pointed out that Kama is a Chatru, an enemy. So now there is a war, a cold war, which is going on in my mind and my enemy, Kama. So how to win this war? A comparison with a real war like the Mahabharata war is relevant. Is in war, they have what is called strategy. A military uses what is called strategy. And strategy is a word derived from military. What do you do in case of war? You have to really attack the enemy. How do you do that? You have to find out where are the strongholds of the enemy and destroy them. You find them in movies where there is a storage of ammunition and the aircraft goes and then bombs are placed because that is where they are getting the strength from. So here you have to destroy the strongholds of enemies to win over the enemy. And which are all the strongholds? Number one are the senses, the indriyani, the sense. And second is mind. Buddhihi, the intellect. The intellect. So there are three strongholds. One is the five sense organs. Two is manaha, the mind. And third is buddhihi, the intellect. Asyaha, its adhisthana. This adhisthana means seat. Muchyate is called etaihi, by these. Vimohayati, deludes. Yeshaha, this. Jnanam, wisdom. Avritya, having enveloped. Dehinam, the one who has body, they embodied. The senses, the mind, and the intellect are said to be its seat. Through these, it deludes the embodied by veiling his wisdom. So you find the three strongholds for Kama to attack me are my own senses, the five sense organs, and my mind, and finally, the intellect, which is not doing its job as it should. There is a beautiful verse by Adi Shankaracharya in Viveka Chudamani. I don't know whether any of you know about this. Adi Shankaracharya had made commentary on Bhagavad Gita. He's also written so many scriptures, and one of them is a very well-known scripture called Viveka Chudamani. And in Viveka Chudamani, there is a beautiful verse. Sapta dibihi panchavireva pancha panchottamapuhu swagunena baddha. There is another one, which is a long sentence. I'll break it up for you. Kuranga matanga patanga meena bringa naraha pancha viranchitaha kim. He's talking about animals, how they get attracted by the sense organ and eventually die. Kurangaha is deer, not a monkey, but a deer. Matangaha is an elephant. Patangaha is a small fly which goes after light. Minaha is fish, and Bringam is the bee, the black bee. Now, each of these is, the deer gets attracted by sound. They have an instrument and it gets attracted and then the hunter kills it. Matanga is the elephant. It wants to join a female elephant. They put this an attraction and then have this kedda, which is a big pit. So hearing the female elephant, the male elephant goes and falls into the pit and it is caught. We also have fish, which gets attracted by a small worm. It wants food, the taste gets killed. The small fly goes after light. You will find it in many places during summer. It goes after the light and eventually dies. The honeybee, there are some flowers which close when the honeybee sits in her, and then the honeybee also gets killed. So these are the small sensory organs by which these animals eventually get destroyed. Likewise, man, with the 5 senses that he have, panchapi anchitaha, naraha, panchabiranchitaha kim. Kim means why. Why does man get attracted by all these 5 senses and eventually destroy himself? Because these are not constant happiness, only temporary happiness. Eventually, it leads you to destruction. So, in fact, if you Bhagavad Gita, if you see, Lord Krishna is shown driving a chariot. The horses are considered to be the 5 senses, which have to be controlled by the rein. The reins represents the mind, the intellect, and Krishna as the self or the Paramatma who is controlling it. So, the senses, the mind and the intellect are said to be the centers of the strongholds of the enemy. And that's what clouds the wisdom. Going further, verse 41, we have Tasmat tvam indriyani adau niyamya bharasarshaba papmanam prajahiyenam jnana vijnana nasanam. Tasmat, therefore, O Arjuna, tvam, you, controlling the sense organs first. Indriyani, adau, in the beginning, right in the beginning. Niyamya, having control. Bharasarshaba, O best of Bharatas. Bharata Vamsham, Arjuna. Papmanam, the sinful. Prajahi, kill. Surely he, enam, this, jnana vijnana nasanam, the destroyer of knowledge and realization. Therefore, he's advising Arjuna, O Arjuna, controlling the senses first, kill this sinful thing called desire, the destroyer of knowledge and realization. Very important advice on how to do it. What is the cause for it and then how to go about it. Verse 42, in 41 itself, let me say, one comment here I want to give you is Jnana Vijnana Nasanam, the last. What does it really mean? The first stage of learning is Jnanam, which is to learn that everybody has 2 parts. One is the mind, the other one is the body. The second is Atma, the inner consciousness. It is Atma, Anatma, Vivekam. The second stage of learning, Jnana, Vijnana, Nasanam. So knowledge also gets destroyed, and that is the body part of it. And realization, vijnana, also you cannot really realize if you have this kama. So the controlling the senses first is the very first thing that one needs to do if you want to kill this sinful thing called the desire, which is insatiable. It cannot be controlled. It cannot be stopped. It tries to grow like fire. Going further, verse 32, Indriyani parani ahuhu, Indriyebhyaha param manaha, Manasaha tu para buddhe, Yaha buddhe paratastutha, Paratu su saha, Paratastu saha. It is a sandhi there. Parataha tu saha. So you say, Yaha buddhehe, Parataha tu saha. So here, Krishna is comparing the senses and the mind and the intellect. As he said, there are three strongholds. The first is the senses. Now, the senses are parani means superior. Like you say, Paramatma, Parameshwara, superior. Para means superior. The senses, Indriyani, Parani, superior, Ahuhu, they say. Who says? The great sages. The Shastras say that Indriye Baha, than the senses. So, the senses are superior to the body in this case. Now, Indriyani has got two meanings here. First, you said Indriyani, the senses. Indriyebhah is referring to the sense of the body. So, you have the Jnana Indriyam. It's also Indriyani. You also have Karma Indriyam. There are two kinds of Indriyams. So, first he says the senses of Jnana Indriyam are superior to the Karma Indriyam, superior to the body, Param superior, Manasaha than the mind, Tu Para Buddhihi, but superior is intellect. Yaha hu Buddhehe than the intellect, Parataha greater, Tu but Sahahi. They say that the senses are superior to the body. Jnanendriyam are superior to the Karmendriyam. Superior to the senses is the mind, Manas. It says thinking power. And superior to the mind is Buddhi, the intellect. And one who is superior even to the intellect is he, the self. Like Krishna is reigning in the horses represent the senses, the mind and the intellect, the reins, and at the seat of control, the superior most is the self or Paramatma. So, comparatively, the mind which can think is superior to you. The mind can tell that I should not eat the rasagulla because I have sugar, but I should not do this or that. But still, it may get overpowered and then start doing things. The intellect at that time, being superior, warns you, but don't let your mind wander. So the intellect is superior than the mind. But the superior most is the Paramatma, who is superior to, that is what is called Jivatma or Paramatma. That is superior most. So going further, the last verse of the day today, verse 43. Now Krishna is really concluding here. Yevam buddhehe param buddva samtabhya atmanam atmana jahi shutrum mahabaho kamarupam durasadam. Evam, thus, buddhehe, than the intellect, param, superior, buddhva, having known, samstabhya, restraining, atmanam, is the self, atmana, by the self, jahi, kill, shatrum, enemy, mahabaho, referring to Arjuna's mighty armed, kama rupam, in the form of desire, durasadam, hard to conquer. Krishna concludes by saying, "Oh Arjuna, your ultimate task is knowing this Atma." Your ultimate task is knowing this Atma, the Chaitanya Tattvam, as they call it. And what kind of Tattvam it is? Buddhehe Param. The knowing him who is superior to the intellect and restraining yourself by the self. By the self means with the help of the Almighty. Kill, O mighty armed Arjuna, the enemy in the form of desire that is hard to conquer. So you have the sense objects which attract you, materials. The senses are the cause of forming the desire. That is controlled by mind, and the mind in turn is controlled by the intellect, and the intellect by the Almighty Himself, which is Prakriti Subhavam. So knowing Him refers to the Lord, who is superior to the intellect, and restraining you by Him. Use that strength, O mighty Arjuna, to kill that desire. So this is the ultimate advice given by Krishna to Arjuna, which applies to everyone, not only to Arjuna, but the entire world, the human beings who get into trouble because of desire, which again transforms itself into anger, as we saw before, and creates havoc, not only to the person, but also to people all around. And that is the moral of the lesson from our scriptures. The Ramayana, Mahabharata, Bhagavad Gita, all of them point to the same thing. So here is the conclusion of chapter 3, and I want to give you a very quick summary of chapter 3 here. For those of you who could not attend earlier, this is a kind of very quick summary which starts with Arjuna's question. Arjuna is confused on two things, on knowledge and action, because Krishna had talked about both jnanam and karma. And he is asking Krishna, which is better? Tell me one thing. You are telling two things. I am confused. I would like to take the better of the two paths. Can I pursue jnanam or can I do karma? With the hope that if Krishna says you pursue jnanam, that he will just resign from the battlefield and then go to the forest. But that did not happen. Krishna is answering him, look, you can't be without karma. Everyone is driven to action by the Prakriti Subhava or gunas. The three gunas which we saw earlier, Rajas, Tamas and Sattva. So one who engages himself in Karma Yoga without attachment, he excels. So here it's a very important thing, it's Bhagavad Gita doesn't recommend that you go into sannyasa directly. Krishna doesn't advocate that. He doesn't advocate any form of renunciation of the material world. Dharmartha kama moksham, he says you pursue what you do. Do your duty. Because action is superior to inaction. You just can't sit a while. do something which is to your aptitude, to your kula dharma. Perform that. Only through your purification of the mind, chitta suddhi as they call it, as you go along, you will be able to graduate into the next stage of Jnana Yoga. You can't jump Karma Yoga and go to Jnana Yoga directly. That's why you got these three yogas in Bhagavad Gita. First 6 are called the Karma Yoga, the second 6 the Bhakti Yoga, and lastly Jnana Yoga. So you have to go through that, and every little sacrifice that you do shows that you have that a little spark in you to show that you understand yet you have some superior force. Even if you break a coconut in a temple, it's a yajna. You do it with some belief that it is going to cause something good for you. You may not do rituals, but at least this form of worship is good. So going further on the summary, Krishna explains what is yajna and what is a sacrifice. Pancha Mahayajna, I mentioned, the 5 yajnas, and doing service to others is itself a sacrifice. And many saints, many jnanis, they keep doing it not for themselves, not for self-satisfaction, but for the welfare of the world. And Krishna explains how these sacrifices really are related to the cycle of nature. That rain causes the food to grow, and the food, after consumption, they go into the earth, and then they cause a cycle of rain again. So it is a cycle of nature which is continuous, and we should respect the 5 elements of nature in order to be able to get the benefits from them. And yajna does not necessarily mean only homam or growing a fire, but even little acts like breaking a coconut is also a sacrifice. He talks about leadership. It's a management lesson. What are the qualities of a leader and how he becomes a role model for other people, like a father at home, like the leader of a country to his people. Very beautifully put out in this Karma Yoga, chapter 3. We saw that in the earlier lesson. And he goes on to explain the differences between a jnani and a jnani. What's the difference between the wise and the ignorant? And he also says why we should not disturb the ignorant or force them. A jnani should allow them to do the work they are pursuing and not create confusion in their minds. So he says what jnani and ajnani should do and should not do. And he recommends faith in the Lord and eventually surrendering all your actions to Him. You do your action and you offer all that to Him without a self-desire for yourself. Whatever happens is for the good. And that is a frame of mind which is very difficult to develop, but that is what is being recommended here. That have total faith and surrender all actions to Him, whoever you are worshipping. And towards the end, after Krishna has explained all this, up to verse number 35, Arjuna is asking Krishna, what is the force that makes people commit sins even after knowing that it is wrong? Even intelligent people, what force makes them commit sins? And Krishna says there is no external force. He names only two, Kama, Krodha, two factors responsible for it, born out of Rajaguna, Rajas. And he recommends control of senses to avoid sins, which is relevant to everyone, not only to Arjuna, but to all of us. So with that advice, Krishna concludes Karma Yoga, and we also conclude the chapter 3 here. So this is the last concluding lines. Hari Om Sat Sat iti Srimad Bhagavad Gita Su Upanishatsu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Sastre Sri Krishna Arjuna Samvade Karma Yogo Nama Tritiyo Adhyayaha. I want to really conclude this with a small song of Adi Shankaracharya, which says, Bhagavad Gita Kinchita Dita Ganga Jalalava Karnika Pita Sakrita Biyena Murari Samarcha Kriyate Tasyayamena Chacha Bhaja Govindam Bhaja Govindam Bhaja Govindam Bhaja Govindam Govindam Bhaja Mudamate. Adi Shankaracharya, one of the famous songs of Bhaja Govindam. This verse comes in that. It means, let a man read a little from Gita. Drink just a drop of water from the Ganga river. Worship Murari, who is Govinda, just once. And then he will have no altercation with Lord Yama at the time of his death. So just as Gita teaches lessons to control anger and emotions, these verses in the form of music is a therapy. It's a music therapy. That which pleases the mind is music. And it's a universal language. Listen to this music. It's available in YouTube. Emma Subbalakshmi has sung this. Such a beautiful one. I love this song, and it surely is something which is a soothing remedy for your emotional disturbances. So the ancient Indian thinkers were all aware of this nexus between music and mind. And music has been a part of the Indian culture very much. Like Samaveda is full of songs, music. So finally, the gist of Karma Yoga is, do your job that is best suited to your birth and aptitude. Perform your actions. Do not be unduly concerned with the results thereof. Be aware that the external world has people of all sorts, some evil, some good, as both always existed. Realize that Kama, Krodha are two biggest enemies to you. And to not get too deeply emotionally disturbed, read this, listen to this, listen to music. Whatever happens, surrender your actions to the Lord. So I'm going to conclude this Karma Yoga with a small, apt sloka. Kayena vacha manasendrirva buddhyatna bha prakrite subhavat karomi yajjat sakalam parasmai narayanayati samarpayami. Kayena vacha, kaya means our body. Manas is mind. Whatever I do with my body or my mind. Buddhyatnabha, with my intellect. Prakrite subhavat, by my inborn gunas. Karomi yajjat, whatever I do. Sakalam, everything. Parasmai. Narayanayat samarpayami, I offer it to Lord Narayana. So this is a slokam with which I'd like to conclude chapter 3. And we're going to take a break. I'm going to be busy with the Rudram next week here in Chicago. So I will get back to you with maybe some announcements later on. I think the first 3 chapters are the most important in Bhagavad Gita, and I'd like to conclude Bhagavad Gita with these 3 chapters, and maybe we'll start some other topic, and I'll get back to you on that. Any suggestions in this regard is most welcome. I can provide you the weekly lessons as usual online. So I wish you all a very happy weekend, and enjoy this summer, and watch for further announcement from me. Till then, Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. I'm going to unmute you now. Anybody comments? See Archana, Raj, Vinay.
Thank you very much, Guruji. It was very enlightening.
Thank you, Guruji.
Yeah, Vinay, very good. I think this would be a very effective session on Bhagavad Gita, these lessons of up to chapter 3. Then usually they go straight away to chapter 18 because there's a lot of repetition in between. So either you want to go with